Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 3rd edition of the Board of Selectmen, Highway Commissioners, Cemetery Commissioners meeting. Before we begin, I have a disclosure to read. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 20, and the Governor's executive orders imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, although a quorum of the members of the Dudley Board of Selectmen will be physically present for this meeting, no in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. The meeting will be live broadcast on Dudley Cable Action Television, Channel 192, and members of the public can also access the rebroadcast of the meeting online via YouTube. In the event of an unanticipated interruption in this broadcast, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive recording of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Members of the public who wish to appear before the Board of Selectmen must make an appointment to appear on an upcoming agenda by contacting Michelle Jervis at selectmen@dudleyma.gov or by calling Michelle at 508-949-8001. Placement on the agenda is not guaranteed, however, and persons requesting to appear before the Board of Selectmen should not attend a meeting in person unless and until the appointment has been confirmed by the Board of Selectmen. Persons with matters appearing on a meeting agenda may request that they attend via virtual means, such as conference call, rather than by in-person attendance. Such a request should be directed to Michelle Jervis at selectmen@dudleyma.gov or by calling Michelle at 508-949-8001, no more than 3 business days in advance so that appropriate arrangements can be made. However, persons or representatives with matters appearing on the meeting notice/agenda who wish to be physically present at the meeting must observe the following requirements. In accordance with the existing requirements imposed by the Governor, meeting rooms will be limited in terms of the total number of persons that may be physically present at the same time, including board/committee members and staff. Satellite rooms will be available for overflow, and the meeting will be broadcast in real time in those satellite rooms. Persons who wish to participate on any particular matter on the meeting agenda will be asked to wait in a satellite room until that agenda item is reached, at which point attendees will be rotated between the main meeting room and the satellite rooms as appropriate. Social distancing must be maintained in both the main meeting room and in satellite rooms. Face masks or coverings will be required in accordance with Governor Baker's May 1st, 2020 COVID-19 Order Number 31, order requiring face coverings in public places where social distancing is not possible. A copy of that order can be found at https://www.mass.gov/docs/may-1-2020-masks-face-covering/download. Phew. Failure to comply with these requirements may lead to an attendee's removal from the meeting. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda is the consent agenda. This is the first time we're doing this where I'd be looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda unless a member of the board would like to take an item out for discussion. Which would be the minutes of July 13th, 2020, and approval for chairman to sign letter of support for Stevens Mill historic tax credits.
Can we pull that one out just so we can just talk about it for a little bit?
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of July 13th, 2020.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Roll call?
Oh,
No.
All's here? We're good?
That's right.
we're in person. Oh, good. Great.
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Approval for chairman to sign letter of support for Stevens Mill historic tax credits. Mr. Marcy.
Yeah, so looks like there's some new names on here. I just wanted to make sure that, the town administrator, everything is the way it's always been when we've been asked by the Petersons and.
So, look, Mr., through the chair, the names are on there optimistically at this point. But
Okay.
no matter what, the letter of support, no matter who owns the building, will award those tax credits. So those names are optimistic. We're still at a standstill, as you know. So right now, all we're asking is for the board to approve the chair's ability to sign that letter.
Okay, so this will roll, hopefully, if we can get that project, going again, this would go towards that.
Correct.
People at home, okay. Just wanted to-
And as you recall, Mr. Chairman, this is just the historic tax credits. Offer tax credits to the crew to make the project more attractive. And those tax credits, by whomever decides to develop it, can be directly applied towards the construction phase of the build-out. So it's only in the town's best interest to sign that and approve those tax credits.
Okay,
That's it, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
you're very welcome. Any other board member comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve, that you sign the letter of support for our Stevens Mill Historic Tax Credits.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Next on the agenda, we have Personnel Board, Board of Selectmen to consider resignation and subsequent request to rescind resignation of Joan Gardecki as a member of the Personnel Board with a term to expire June 30th, 2021, tabled from July 13th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Joseph.
I'd like to move that we rescind the resignation of Joan Gardecki as a member of the Personnel Board, and that she be appointed to a term, or that we reaffirm her term, will expire June 30th, 2021.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Hey, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Sullivan.
I believe I saw Joan in the back, and I gladly would say it to her in person,
Here?
but for the record, I would like to thank,
Oh, there she
He's
is.
here, actually.
I just want to say, Joan,
Whoops. If you'd like to come to the podium, more than welcome.
I just want to say, Joan, I know I don't speak for the whole board, but I think I will when I say we thank you. We appreciate your efforts. We greatly appreciate your reconsideration of your resignation and to continue to fill out your term. And thank Mr. Joseph for facilitating that, and you and the town administrator for being able to work it out, contacting each other. But I am glad you're back, Joan.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Is there anything you'd like to add, Joan?
Yeah, I just want to say that I hope that the Personnel Board will be utilized. And when I resigned, Peter Fox and Rose Smuko were still on the board. But now there really isn't a board. Well, now, if I get voted in, there will be.
There will be. We'll have a quorum of 3. And we can get on with the town, with the business of the town.
Question?
Oh,
I'm sorry, John.
Mr.
And no,
Morrison.
Joan, thanks for coming back. I know that, you could use your a lot of your knowledge around from many years working around here. Just looking forward for us to getting back to, the business of the town and helping us find a highway superintendent, so thanks.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Joseph.
Joan, I love the way you serve the town. You're a person who never lies, you always tell the truth, and you always do your research. So I guess my question is, have you had a conversation with the town administrator as the director of personnel, and are you comfortable with the relationship that you will have as a personnel board with him?
I believe Jonathan and I can work together.
Okay.
Are you willing to try?
I'm willing, sure, of course.
Oh, that's what matters. Thank you.
Good. Very welcome. Any other comments? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Joan.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Alex Morris, candidate for Congress. Alex, are you on the conference call bridge?
Yes, I'm here. I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Fred, can you
Hello?
hear him good? Yes, hello, sorry, we have masks on. Can you hear me now, Alex?
All right. Yes, I can hear you well if you can hear me.
Excellent, thank you. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. I know you're running for U.S. Congress, and more than happy to give you
Yeah.
15 minutes to speak to what you feel you need to speak to. But thank you for considering the town of Dudley in your campaign tour, and I'll give the floor to you, sir.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and excited to speak to folks here in the town of Dudley, and thank all of you for your service to the town as well. I was listening in on and as a mayor for 9 years, obviously I have a deep appreciation for the inner workings of city and town government. And I've been a candidate for Congress now just over a year. I launched last July 2019, and we try to model this campaign as to how we want to represent the district in Congress, and that means showing up and being present and accessible in every one of the 87 cities and towns, not just Hampden County, but Worcester County and Berkshire County, Franklin and Hampshire County, and making sure that those folks, not just again in one part of the district, but particularly in the rural parts of the district, the smaller towns, the hill towns, feel like you have a member of Congress that is responsive and present and shows up time and time again. I've been in Holyoke my whole life. It's a city of 40,000 people right outside Springfield. I say it's a small city with big city challenges. My parents grew up in public housing in poverty here, and neither had the opportunity to graduate from high school or go on to college, but they worked their entire life to make sure that my brothers and I had the opportunities they didn't have. And if you know anything about Holyoke, I mean, we had at one point the most millionaires per capita in the entire country, a booming paper industry. In fact, we were the first planned industrial city in the entire country, nicknamed the Paper City. And like a lot of cities in the Northeast and in the Midwest, we fell on hard times. The jobs moved down south or overseas at the very time new folks came to our communities, and we've struggled for decades really to figure out how do we expand tax revenue and grow jobs and bring our downtowns back to life and in the hundreds of thousands of square feet of vacant mill space. And I grew up in a backdrop of high crime and flight out of the city into the suburbs and struggling public schools, and people had just given up on the city for so long. And as someone that went through the public schools and got a good education in the Holyoke public schools, I became the first in my family to go to college when I went to Brown and studied urban studies. And then, unlike so many of my classmates and friends, I constantly came back to Holyoke every summer, every winter. I loved my hometown, my family, and my community. And there were also some very real challenges in my life that always drew me back to home. My oldest brother, as some of you may know, unfortunately passed away from a heroin overdose earlier this year. And so for the last 20 years, my family and I have struggled with navigating a healthcare system that really doesn't value mental health or the opioid epidemic, and making sure people have access to detox and treatment and step-down programs, so on and so forth. And my mom, when she was alive, struggled with mental health challenges. And so those two experiences, along with my love for my hometown, brought me back to Holyoke. And I was 22 years old when I launched my candidacy for mayor against the Democratic incumbent mayor, who had been in politics in Holyoke for nearly 20 years, and we knocked on thousands of doors. And clearly the status quo was broken, and the city was at a really important inflection point. And I've now been mayor 9 years. I'm in my fourth term. I'm 31 now, and we've made a lot of progress in a lot of key areas. When I took office, only 49% of our kids were graduating from our schools, and today nearly 75% of our students are now graduating from high school. And so a lot of progress, but still more work to do. Crime is down 40% in every neighborhood in the city, and we've improved the relationship between our police department and the community we serve by investing in community policing and substations and getting officers walking the beat and riding bicycles, and just going back to knowing who your neighborhood officer is and having positive experiences to that effect. We've transitioned the city largely off of fossil fuels. We're about 92% carbon neutral. We closed the state's last coal plant and replaced it with one of the state's largest solar fields and a battery storage facility. And we've started to bring the downtown back to life. We've made public investments in a canal walk along our 3 downtown canals. We brought passenger rail back for a north-south connection that goes from Springfield, Holyoke up north through Northampton all the way up to St. Albans, Vermont on the border of Montreal. And we've been able to develop upwards of 600 units of housing in the downtown. And I say we've made progress over the last 9 years despite a lack of federal resources and despite a federal budget and system that really doesn't prioritize Western and Central Massachusetts. And when you look at outcomes in this district, you would frankly never know we have one of the most powerful members of Congress representing us. And I'm oftentimes asked, why am I challenging a 32-year incumbent that happens to be the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee? And when you consider the disparities in outcomes in this district, the fact that Springfield is the asthma capital of our entire country, the fact that dozens of cities and towns in this district still don't have access to basic broadband internet, that small towns and cities are struggling with how to pay for basic public services, be it a public library or a senior center, or again, providing internet to families, particularly in the middle of this pandemic where the digital divide is more transparent and obvious than ever before. And so on metric after metric, frankly, again, you would never know we have one of the most senior members representing us. And our differences on healthcare are stark. Our differences on responding to the climate crisis, on racial and immigrant justice, and on the influence of money in politics. We pledged not to take a single dollar of money from corporations or corporate PACs, because I never want the folks of Dudley, of anywhere in the district, to wonder why I'm taking a particular vote or spending time with particular people. And unfortunately, our congressman has the distinction of being the #1 recipient of corporate money in the entire House of Representatives, Democrat or Republican. And that's money from Wall Street, the fossil fuel industry, big pharma. And so when it comes to fighting for a healthcare system that truly believes healthcare is a fundamental human right, I want to make sure that we fight for a system that actually responds to the people here in the district. And when you look at our federal budget, over 60% of our federal budget goes to the Pentagon, and less than 5% goes to public education and healthcare and college affordability. And I know as mayor, we haven't had a new school built in our community in over 30 years, longer than I've been alive. And our only option has been to force well-meaning taxpayers and residents against each other to raise property taxes on folks that are already on fixed incomes. And if we can create a $500 billion slush fund for corporations in the middle of this pandemic, we should be able to find the resources necessary to bail out cities and towns. Because we're talking about police officers and firefighters and librarians and public school teachers. And it's time we actually have a federal government that works for us, not just for those that are wealthy and well-connected. And so in addition to our differences, I will say, regardless of the power and seniority you have, there should still be an expectation that you show up and do town halls. And even as a mayor of 9 years of a major city in the district, I can count on one hand, I have seen our congressmen in our community partnering with us. And we have a congressman that hasn't had a town hall in over 3 years. And we have Democrats, Republicans all around this country that during recess, on the weekends, they show up, they do public meetings, they answer tough questions, and they allow constituents to hold them accountable. And so I pledge, you may not agree with me on every issue, nor will you agree with me on every vote that I take, but I always promise and pledge to show up, to answer questions and explain why I think my decision and my position is in the best interest of the people and cities and towns of Western and Central Massachusetts. And so I just appreciate all of you giving me the opportunity to share a few words. We're just 4 weeks out from the primary on September 1st, and we've had a great campaign traveling and crisscrossing the district and engaging virtually for several months at the pinnacle of this pandemic. And I just encourage all of you to, to engage and watch the debates and do your research. And obviously happy to answer questions now, and if time doesn't allow, happy to connect one-on-one via email or over the phone or in other venues more about this campaign and what's important to me.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Joseph?
Alex, this is Paul Joseph. When Sarah called me and said,
Hey, I've heard great things about you from Sarah.
What's that?
He's heard
I've heard great things about you from Sarah.
Well, let me tell you.
She's lying.
She said, I'm calling you on behalf of Alex Morse. And in my typical manner, I said, who the hell is he? And then I got, in fact, this afternoon, I read your piece comparing yourself to Richard Neal. And in fact, my eyes were opened by the factoids that you listed, and they disturbed me. So, number one, I understand that nobody is elected forever, although I wouldn't mind that. My big question is, why you? Why now? You're running against a strong candidate. Why you? Why now?
Yeah, I think the status quo is failing our communities, and our cities and towns and our people are falling behind. And a lot of us had high hopes when Congressman Neal became chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. And I will remind you, in D.C. there are no longer earmarks and pork, and it's not as if Congressman Neal is bringing home the bacon, as members of Congress once did. In fact, Congressman Neal, since becoming chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, has been using his power to benefit the corporations that invest vast amounts of money into his campaign. One great example, 10,000 Americans a day get a surprise medical bill. Weeks later, for out-of-network coverage, be it from an ambulance company, a hospital, a doctor's office, 10,000 Americans a day get a hospital bill. And this bill was almost across the finish line. This was a bipartisan bill. Republicans supported it. Many Democrats supported it. Even Donald Trump was ready to sign this bill. And Congressman Neal in December single-handedly stalled the bill. And he had never before taken any campaign contributions from Blackstone, a private equity group that was lobbying against the bill. They suddenly became his biggest donor this campaign cycle, donating $50,000 to his campaign, and he tanked that bill in December. And I've met with countless people here in the district that have been hit with a surprise medical bill, sometimes upwards of $10,000, $15,000, even $20,000. That's one example. There have been a number of bills. There was another bill in October of last year that Neal killed in the Ways and Means Committee that would have allowed the government to negotiate lower drug prescription prices. And when you just can't take on big pharmaceutical companies, big corporations, Wall Street, if at the same time you're taking their money. And I think this isn't exclusive to the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party. And yes, I'm a Democrat, but this is less about Democrat versus Republican or progressive versus moderate. It's about having a member of Congress that you can trust that is fighting for just everyday people, like working class, middle class families in this district that are getting squeezed, particularly right now. And as I said before, we have grave differences on health care and the climate crisis, on reproductive rights, but this whole theme of just showing up. And there are incredible rural parts of this district. We have more farms in the 1st District than any of the 9 congressional districts in the state. And I pledge to have a rural desk that focuses on rural issues and issues important to small towns that oftentimes I think are forgotten about, not only by Boston, but particularly by Washington, D.C. And I would argue it's not those members of Congress that have been there for 30 or 40 years that are bringing more attention and resources to the district or transforming the agenda for our country. It's really those members of Congress that have been relatively new arrivals to Washington that are shaking up the system and shaking up the status quo and being the most effective spokespeople for their communities. And I remember when I announced my candidacy for mayor as a 21-year-old back in 2011, and people told me to wait my turn, that you're not from a political family, you don't run against an incumbent, and we just brought our message directly to people at their doorsteps and in their living rooms. And it was the first time in decades that people had actually seen a candidate ask them, what's important to you? And how can we partner? And that's what we've done over the last 9 years. And I recognize Congressman Neal has a lot of power, and he has millions of dollars from big corporations, but we have people in every corner of this district. And just last Monday, we announced that we've now raised over $1 million since we launched this campaign. We've now been endorsed by the state's largest nurses union, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, made up of 23,000 nurses across the state. And for an organization like that to endorse against the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, these are nurses on the front lines of this pandemic that are struggling to get basic access to PPE in the middle of this COVID pandemic in our communities. And yes, he has power, but you have all of that power. I mean, why is it right now? I mean, in North Adams and the Berkshires, their only inpatient hospital closed. In Holyoke right now, hundreds of inpatient psychiatric beds are closing. Birthing centers are closing. Public schools in small towns are closing because they can't afford the cost of municipal health insurance. And so again, there's one thing to have power, and it's another for it to actually translate into actually helping everyday people in small towns and cities that are struggling right now.
Thank you for that answer.
Anyone else? Mr.
Thank you for
Sullivan?
asking.
Mayor Morse, my name is Stephen Sullivan. I've been on the board about 15 years. I've been involved in government for 20 years. I understand what it's like to be attacked negatively. I'm going to ask you a question. I received a flyer in my mailbox today from your opponent. And in that flyer, it stated when you were an elected member of your local school committee, you missed somewhere in the neighborhood of 45% of the votes. He cited 3 or 4 news outlets that confirmed that you had confirmed it. I want to know, first off, is that true? And if it's true, is that a pattern that we would expect our congressman would miss a certain percentage of votes?
You cut out a little bit, but I think you were asking about the mailing about school committee and meeting attendance and whatnot.
Yes, it stated that somewhere, you would miss somewhere about 45% of the vote, meetings, I believe, and it cited 4.
Gotcha.
It cited 4 news organizations that supposedly confirmed it. I'm just asking you, first off, is it true? And is that an attendance, right, that we'd expect out of our congressman?
Yeah, so I mean, number one, it's a flat-out lie and fabrication of my record. So as mayor, I'm automatically chair of the Holyoke School Committee, and I've been mayor for 9 years. There have been, I mean, dozens and dozens of school committee meetings, and I'm gonna pull the minutes and get the exact attendance rate. But this has been an attack lobbied against me in 2015 and 2017 against opponents of mine, and the people of Holyoke saw through it. I've attended at least 80 to 90% of school committee meetings, and as mayor and the CEO of the city, obviously in touch with our school department and superintendent on a daily basis. And those evenings that I did miss a school committee meeting, it was the same night as a city council budget committee meetings or an ordinance committee meeting, and so occasionally I'm unable to be in 2 places at once as the mayor, and so I have occasionally missed meetings, but it's nowhere near the 45% that the congressman is alleging. And I welcome a conversation on our schools any day of the week. Congressman Neal criticizes me for the city schools being in receivership, and I want to remind him that, Congressman, these are your schools too. And where were you in 2015 where we were fighting for local control? There's only 3 school districts in the entire state in receivership, and 2 out of the 3 are in his district, Southbridge and Holyoke. And Congressman Neal was silent and neutral and complicit in that takeover. Number 2, again, we have a federal budget that invests pennies in education, particularly now as we're grappling with how are we going to reopen schools in a safe way. And just for parents and moms in particular, how can you balance working and homeschooling and being a mom at the same time and not supporting universal child care in 2020? And so Congressman Neal, for his entire career, has prided himself on never running a negative ad or sending a negative mailer. And it seems that he's taking this campaign seriously enough that he's now begun to change that pledge. And we're going to keep talking about the differences between us, but talking about where we want to take this district. And so in short, it's not true. And I think it's ironic coming from a member of Congress that has been largely absent, hasn't had a town hall in over 3 years, and honestly has one of the poorest attendance rates for votes in Washington of any member of our delegation in Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Marcy?
Hi, Alex. Thanks for coming to us to get some time. I'm John Marcy. I'm starting my 9th year on the Board of Selectmen here in Dudley. And my question is, and I agree that having an absentee congressman, is a problem. There's a few towns, you're well aware of this, at the eastern end of your district that align more closely with Worcester County. So in 2010, the last redistricting, they put 4 towns in Worcester County in with your district. Well, Rep. Neal's district. Actually, when they got rid of Rep. Oliver and all that stuff, it districted them out. What would Representative Morse do, for people like Worcester, assuming we don't get put with Worcester County, which quite frankly, I think that's where we belong, but what would a Rep. Morse administration look like for those towns in Worcester County that really don't, they're a little bit different than Western Mass?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And as I've traveled the district and, obviously I've been out to that part of the district quite a few times at different events in town and more so before the pandemic. And so it's been a little bit of a challenge, but, nevertheless, I've been in touch with a number of local elected officials and community leaders. And I think that's the major concern is that people are feeling left behind and forgotten about. And as I mentioned before, it's important for us to have staff in the office that's reflective of the geography of the district, people that know what the challenges are of small towns, particularly in Worcester County. And it's also about listening and doing town halls. It's inconceivable to me that you would go to Washington and go to Congress and purport to write legislation responsive to small towns and communities and the people that live there without actually having conversation. And it's more than just showing up and meeting with CEOs of big companies. It's meeting with employees and local elected officials. And what I found in every town that I visit is people have forgotten to look to their member of Congress as a partner. And so if you have a local challenge, budgetary challenge, municipal building project, we've forgotten to look to our federal government for help and assistance. And I want to be a member of Congress where it's, how can Congressman Morse and his team come together to strategize about how we accomplish this goal locally for this community. And so I will spend as much time as possible listening and learning, not pretending I have all the answers, and not wanting to go to Washington to do the work for you and pretend I know it all. But how do we meet on a regular basis and set up standing meetings and conversations and community town halls in Dudley and throughout this area of the district, so I can go back to Washington and say, this is what I've heard, and this is who told me, and keep coming back and building those relationships. And as I started, it's so many people, not just in Worcester County, but Berkshire County, up in Franklin County, and parts of Hampshire County. They either have never heard of the member of Congress or have heard of him and have never met him. And it's really important we have a member of Congress. And, I have the energy and the passion to, show up. It's not that far of a drive whatsoever, and build these relationships and really just become a more effective advocate. So again, it's really leaning on the people that know their neighborhoods and their community best and relying on people like you and your colleagues to say, what are those challenges and what have been those barriers at the state and federal level to accomplish those goals. And so that's in town halls. It's having a staff that shows up and is responsive and listens, and trusted people in the office that you can reach out to for help when needed.
Right. No, and I appreciate that. I like what I'm hearing. I met Rep. Neal once at the State House in Boston. But my follow-up question is, a lot of times, we talk about local issues, and as selectmen, that's pretty much all we care about, right? Local, our state rep and senator, and just that things that can affect Dudley and help us solve the problems that we have. So having a congressman that's added to that mix would definitely be good. But what I've seen, a lot of the people who won primaries and got to DC instantly turned into national stars, and it made more about, the drama that I really don't give a crap about, right? And how do you keep it local? How do you do that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And
I'm not trying to be flippant. I just want to.
I'm not far from home,
Yeah.
right? My parents grew up here in Holyoke in public housing, and like I said, I had the incredible opportunity and privilege to go to Brown University. And as so many classmates and friends of mine went off to Wall Street or Teach for America or DC or Boston and did internships and jobs all around the world, my only interest was coming back home. I'm a hometown guy and close to my family and my community, and I take joy in being here in this part of the state. And so even when I'm in Congress, it's not about being in Washington. It's how can I be in the district and present and accessible as much as possible. And I think I've redefined sort of what it looks like to be a mayor in a community like Holyoke too, where people oftentimes think the mayor is up in some ivory tower that you don't have access to, and it's no, we're just everyday people that love our community and never forget where you come from. And over the last 9 years as mayor, I haven't traveled the country and saw headlines. I've kept my head down with my team to make as much progress as possible. And I'm proud of the work that we've done, but I've also recognized the longer I've been there that we're doing the best we can in a federal system, again, that really doesn't empower us to make lasting, sustainable change for our constituents. And it's challenging and it's struggling. And I alluded to before, I mean, our healthcare system, for example, is manifesting itself on the local level with our psychiatric hospitals closing, our birthing center closing at Holyoke Medical Center. Holyoke Medical Center is one of the last community hospitals left in the state, hardly qualified for aid from the federal government. Insurance companies are allowed to pay hospitals in Central and Western Mass a fraction of what they would pay for the same procedure at Mass General in Boston. And we still have Democrats in the State House and State Senate here in Massachusetts that are unwilling to take on the insurance industries. And so we need to look out for our communities first and foremost. That will always be my number one concern. And while Congressman Neal is prioritizing Speaker Pelosi and what she asked him to do, I will make sure my calls are to the constituents and residents here in the district when it comes to making decisions and taking votes.
Alex, I appreciate the candor on that. Thanks.
Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Morse, Jay Johnson, Selectman. Would Congressman Morse support term limits to avoid the current situation in Congress?
It's certainly something I'm open to. I haven't committed to it. I remember when I first ran for mayor back in 2011, I was very clear that I wanted to be mayor for 8 to 10 years, and I thought that was a long enough period of time to really, make a lasting impact and make improvements in the community. I don't think these should be lifelong appointments for Democrats or Republicans. And when you're there for 20, 30, 40 years, you become part of the status quo, and you help create it. And you become almost incapable of being self-critical and reflective as to what changes and improvements still need to be made. And so I do think I know there's been some proposals out there for in the House it's a 2-year term, in the Senate it's a 6-year term. Is it 2 years in the Senate or 3 years or 3 terms in the Senate? Is it 6 or 7 terms in the House? Is that too much, too few? And so it's certainly something I'm open to supporting, unlike many members of Congress. I also think we need campaign finance reform. It becomes so hard for just everyday people to run for office or feel like they have access to run for office. And while term limits are different than that end of the conversation, once you're in office in a solid red district or a solid blue district, historically you're there as long as you want to be. And you cozy up to special interests like Neal has, and you get a war chest of $4 million, and it almost becomes impossible for challengers to come up against that. And what I'm very proud of is we just had our best fundraising quarter that ended at the end of June for April, May, and June. We raised $322,000 from thousands of grassroots individual contributions. Congressman Neal only raised $13,000 more than us, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee. The difference is 80% of his contributions came from corporate political action committees. 100% of our contributions came from actual people, and 95% of them were under $200. And so it's just a stark difference between who we're representing and who we want to fight for in Washington. And term limits, I think, need to be addressed in the same way we address how we fund elections, because even members of Congress are spending way too much time on the phone asking people for money rather than actually attending committee hearings and doing the job they were elected to do.
Anything else? Excellent. Well, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate you coming on tonight and speaking to the people of Dudley and answering questions from the Board of Selectmen. I know we only originally had you on for about 10 or 15 minutes, but it's been about half an hour, and I don't want to take all of your time, but we appreciate you calling in and sharing your campaign ideas with us.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you,
No,
Alex.
absolutely. I really appreciate the opportunity, and you can take my cell or my email if you want to provide it on their behalf, and happy to stay in touch if any questions come up, okay?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, have a great night.
You too.
As well. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Town Administrator's Report. Mr. Administrator.
Board members, good evening. I feel like there should be white smoke coming out of the top of the town hall because we have a local aid. So, to this point, we have a local aid commitment at least. So the local aid commitment is level funded for FY20 according to DOR and our town council that works very closely with DOR. So that's one important piece of the puzzle that's now been resolved for the next 11 months, and I'm going to begin working with the town accountant to prepare the October supplemental budget for town meeting. We'll continue to be a little bit strategic in terms of what and how we fund budgets for the remainder of the fiscal year. The town clerk, is she here tonight? Okay, good. She's going to brief the board shortly and let everybody know what we're going to be facing in terms of election requirements from a standpoint of mail-in voting, COVID considerations, and so forth. So she's going to give the board an overview a little bit later on tonight. There's no doubt that the Board of Health and the town clerk will need additional assistance to meet the DPH requirements, at least through the end of October and right into election day. The presidential election, I believe, is on November 3rd. So that's going to be something that we consider, how much we're going to be reimbursed for that. Some of it will be CARE Act reimbursable. There are some qualifying items that we can put in for. Some of it we're going to have to be a little bit creative with, but that's become the norm, so I'm confident that we can do that. As we begin to reassemble our budget, I'm going to propose the following receive funding priority. This is in October when we start to try to reassemble what we had to dismantle in the spring. First, going to take a look at contractual obligations and make sure that those are funded appropriately. Public safety, including snow removal and highway, health, and public safety are all going to be a top priority. Security with emphasis on cybersecurity. We have a lot of changes to our network system now. Of course, we have to prioritize elections and continuing to offer town hall services, which is going to be interesting. We have some, we want to see if we can fund stabilization and provide for legacy costs, such as other post-employment benefits. That's our OPEB account, which, when we get into budget season, that's going to be a whole nother conversation as we enter into the fall. And finally, we're going to look at quality of life services, such as the library.
Question, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
Mr. Joseph.
Jonathan, now that we know that the local aid is likely to be level funded, I have two questions. One is it your intention that departments will also be, therefore, level funded?
My intention would be we'd be level servicing most crucial departments, not so much level funding departments, because we have contractual obligations that we need to meet.
Okay. And my second question is really, for the time being, addressed to the town administrator, but also to the Board of Selectmen. Do we intend to ask both school districts to provide a level-funded budget for FY21?
So that's what was passed in the spring. We level funded our regional budget request. I think we were level funded at plus 100. We were right on the mark with level funding. So we're already there. We don't need to adjust that or touch it.
Then my question becomes, because I don't understand it, number 6, why would the library be a priority for budgeting? Is there something that you know that we don't know?
Well, it's number 6 out of a list of 6.
I'm sorry?
It's number 6 out of a list of 6, so I wouldn't necessarily characterize that as a priority.
But why even include it? What is it about the library that makes them a funding priority when most other non-public safety departments will be level funded? What is it about it?
It's not a matter of a funding priority. It's a matter of we can begin to offer services at the current level that was funded in the fall by offering curbside service. They're currently closed. We are now at a point in the pandemic when we can begin reopening them and offering curbside services, which will improve the quality of life and not cost any more money.
Okay. I know I may stand alone on this, and if that's the case, so be it. But I would like number 6 changed to remove the library. And if I were going to put anybody in there beside or instead of the library, it would be something like Veteran Services.
So I would just remind the chair that we haven't, that Veteran Services was fully funded in the spring.
Yeah, well, the Veteran Services also generates a lot of income in terms of reimbursement, federal and state, for the town. So I'm just, somebody help me, what am I missing about the library even being listed as a funding priority?
Mr. Johnson?
To the chair, I believe the library would be included in quality of life services. So a quality of life service like the library is something that established communities with budgets and almost like a recreational. Although I know someone's going to start texting me and say, it's educational, right? But those are those things. Like if you can
Lifeguards
open up,
at the beach.
if you can open up recreation for free or some extra learning opportunity, you do that. The library is not obviously free, so it's down at the bottom list. I'm at a loss. What the beach?
I was just, you looked struggling to find something else, so I just
Yeah.
threw that out there. Lifeguard at the beach.
There's no lifeguard.
I have nothing against the library, I really don't. I just don't see why it would even be listed as a funding priority.
Mr. Marcy?
I mean, our constituents are asking for it pretty hard,
There's no 7.
I'll agree with that.
right? This is something we have
Say
to,
again, John?
our constituents are asking for it to be open on the curbside basis so they can feel like a sense of.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
There's
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Joseph, there's a lot of parents schooling their children from
Yes.
home. They want to keep their kids busy with doing something other than a
Read
video
books versus
game.
other stuff. People who are used to doing that as part of their routine.
I don't think we want to write them a blank check, but it's,
No.
we,
I mean,
some
okay, but you
services
know
won't-
me, I don't like to drop it just like that.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Not because I'm bellicose, but because I doubt the validity of it versus maybe some other departments. I guess my question is the library the only thing that people are asking for an increase for?
Not an increase. I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Just to reopen.
It's a reassembling of the budget where that is something that makes sure that we.
I might be able to clarify, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead.
So, right now, the library was funded at the Springtown meeting at a certain level. We have the ability to perhaps bring back some library assistance that may qualify for reimbursement under the CARE Act at no cost to the town, and simply turn on the lights and provide curbside service without taking it from any other budgets, as it stands now.
Okay, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Oh, certainly.
Have there been complaints, or is it the perception, or is there data that shows that the library's inventory and/or services are inadequate?
The only data I would offer is that it's closed. So it's
Say
got to be,
again?
it can only be inadequate because it's closed.
Okay, one more.
Mr. Marcy?
So if you take in toto what has happened during this pandemic, where we've had to create a new model for the recycling center, where that's only open 2 days a week, right? For some people, that's quality of life.
Yeah.
And that's for, that discussion is for another
Okay.
day.
Well,
When you have the library, when we say, oh, now that's closed too, everybody wants to know why. Is there a reason? Did somebody get sick? Is it not funded? There was, they took a hit, at the Springtown meeting because of the furloughs and all of that stuff that we had, that the budget had to do. But if you look at the big picture, it's like we're not, looking at anything. I mean, all of us on this board talk about quality of life issues, like having the beach and street lights, and the library is just part of the town, right? I agree with your point about veteran services, senior services, that stuff's in there.
Maybe Mr. Joseph was under the impression it's open. It's not open right now. It's
Say
closed.
again?
It's closed.
It's closed. It's been closed since March.
People have to go to Webster and other towns to do this,
okay,
and they can.
all right. I mean, that's no fault of the library
Yeah, yeah,
staff.
right.
I understand. So, but I don't want to be misquoted as being anti-library.
No,
I'm
no.
certainly not.
No.
Let me ask this question. Have we reduced their budget in any time in the last 3 years?
Yes,
And that is due primarily to COVID-19?
correct.
Is that the sole reason we've reduced their budget?
No, it's not. The first reason was that before COVID-19 hit, and I was working on my initial proposal for this past springs for FY '21, I asked the librarian to hold off on her request for additional assistance. So she put in the request, I reduced the request by that amount, and said we would take another look at it in October. Subsequent to that, we had the COVID-19 hit, and we furloughed all the library assistants. So that was the second reduction.
And I appreciate that, Jonathan. Just so you know, I will not vote to give the library any increase from this particular year. I don't think it's justified. It's not even open. Unless there is some financial benefit in us doing that, I would not vote to change their budget. I would level fund them. Again, I don't want to be misquoted. I'm not anti-library. I just don't see how you can give one department that doesn't need it an increase and everybody else gets level funded.
And I agree with Mr. Joseph's premise, but the library as it stands right now, as of the spring, is below level funding from last fiscal year. We've reduced a quarter of payroll for the library assistants, and so they're already below level funding. Even if we open them tomorrow,
Okay.
that is going to remain the case.
Other departments, I'm sorry, Sally's gonna.
Mr. Sullivan?
I'm just trying to get it clear in my head, I guess, and I'm listening to everybody. What Mr. Reuter has listed is 1 through 6 in order of what he feels should come back online.
Correct.
We're not looking at, well, obviously, contractual obligations would be an increase
yeah.
built into the contract. That's why it says it, public safety, highway department would pay more cost. So 1 through 6 is just a statement of priority. So, for example, if we come back in October and Mr. Reuter presents an updated budget supplemental spending, we only get as far as number 4, well, that's too bad. But Veteran Services and the library have generated some questions, and Mr. Reuter, I think, was clear. Veteran Services funded and open.
Correct.
Library is funded but not open.
Correct.
But that line item was adjusted in the spring upon a discussion with the head librarian
Is-
before COVID.
Correct.
So if
Yeah.
going forward, as COVID in the parentheses as allowed by DPH, if DPH tightens up restrictions, number 6 could be a non-factor anyway, because if you believe what you read, we may be trending in that direction anyway
Yep.
on
And a
some of
very-
these things.
And it very well could, because in the time that I've been on the FAA and on the Board of Selectmen, I cannot remember any sizable contribution to the OPEB account. And that's before the library. And I think, not in defense of the administrator, but the way that I read this, library and quality of life services is allowed by DPH. I think he used the library as an example instead of just putting quality of life services, or instead of putting library, playground, lifeguard, whatever else is kind
Yeah,
of.
and that might be just simply an unfortunate choice of words, but Jay said it specifically, that the library is one of the elements that contributes to the quality of life services. Life services meaning the quality of life here in town, period. I would hesitate to list the library only. I would want to see quality of life services defined and who that would include. And I think, and, you know, I'm going to say this publicly, Jonathan, you've done a hell of a job keeping this town working and afloat in terms of budget, COVID-19, not furloughs, layoffs. Now, I'm not criticizing what you're doing at all, but I think it's not necessary to list the library, just simply to list, as Mr. Johnson alluded to, those things that contribute to the quality of life in the town.
But
So-
Mayor, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, you may, Mr.
But as the
Larson.
budget does, as our budget picture does become more clearer, we owe it to people to actually give it a look if it's on this list.
I put that on the list as the last priority
Yeah.
in terms of quality of life in general. For example, the Council on Aging is almost entirely grant-funded. DPH, because of the restrictions, they
Yep.
are completely shuttered and closed right now. We can't open that center. But if we can, and it's going to require an extra clean or something like that to restore the quality of life, to get the seniors back, and DPH allows it, that's what I'm thinking.
I
When we
repeat, you've done
get
a hell
to
of a
that.
job.
Thank you.
Are we on to chapter 70?
Chapter
We're on to
70.
chapter 70.
We're on to Miami.
That's right.
Cincinnati.
That's Cincinnati.
Chapter 70 it appeared as though we were going to get a commitment to level funding, but then something happened. We don't know what, so we don't quite have that commitment yet. But we think that's coming next. And the good news is, we submitted a budget that was essentially level funded for the regional school district in the spring, so we should be good for the rest of the fiscal year there. The next thing just is an overview of what I'm hearing about the GDP that contracted 33%, or it's estimated to be having, by October, it will have contracted at a rate of 33%. So I put that in there only to explain why I'm going to be so conservative when we start putting together our budget in October, because for October, because we certainly don't know what the next 11 months are going to bring. So we're going to go easy, and we're going to fund our priorities. I'm going to propose that we fund our priorities in anticipation for maybe not the most stable fiscal year that we're currently in for the next 11 months. So that's the only reason I put that in there. But knowing what the economy is going to do is like the third piece of the puzzle. The first one being local aid, the second one being Chapter 70, and what the economy is doing in terms of our revenues is certainly a piece of the puzzle that we need to consider. So what I'm going to ask is that going into October, as we begin bringing the budget back and begin restoring some of these services and positions that we absolutely need to support our elections and so forth, and snow plowing and all those critical services, that the board supports the moratorium on unnecessary spending at least through October until we see where we're at. So that's kind of why I brought that in there, because the memo that the board approved back in March is still in effect, so I just kind of wanted to reaffirm that we're all still on the same page with that. Crap, why did I put this library thing in here now?
That's fine.
Yeah. We're going to begin offering curbside service. And we're going to try to bring some library assistants back to help with that. Curbside service is essentially like a drive-through. They call ahead, they order the book, and it's waiting for them. And that's generally the model in Phase 1 and going into Phase 2 that other cities and towns are following in conjunction with DPH guidance. And I'm going to try to bring those library aids back in a situation where they're reimbursable under the CARE Act. So I don't see any change in the current budget to support that. But I think that's a service we should look at opening up.
Which, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
which,
Mr.
when
Morrison.
I read this earlier, real quick, I was including that piece in with, your prioritized list, right? It's already happening, right?
We're already paying for it now, so let's open it up.
Right.
And then finally, I've spoken with the building commissioner, and I've asked him to do walk-in office hours beginning Monday from 4 to 7, so that builders and developers and homeowners can actually access him during a certain time frame during the week, because it's been hard to try to maneuver these restricted hours that we have and nail him down at certain times. So he's willing to do that from 4 to 7 every Monday. And then the other 3 days would be, the other 2 days would be walk-in service, counter service. That's being covered by Jen Canoia currently. And that's it for my report.
Good for you. Any questions, Mr. Johnson?
Question on that last item. For days that we're not here on Mondays, would that be the only activity in the building, 4 to 7?
That would be the only activity in the building, and he would be in charge of locking it, and I've spoken to him about that. So at 7 o'clock, the building would be locked. We've been working on trying to get these meetings as on the same night as humanly possible, instead of spreading them out on all 4 or 5, 4 days over the course of the week, to try to make it a little easier for our videographers to cover it, and to try to keep the traffic in and out of the building limited. So that's part of the plan as well.
Mr. Sullivan?
To the administrator, how do they get access and how do we restrict access? Meaning, is the main door going to be open? And how will we prevent someone from coming in, getting off on the second floor as opposed to coming all the way up? Or is he doing it in the lobby?
I don't have a plan to restrict access. We were just going to simply not close at 4:30 and let it run till 7. If you think that's a concern, I can certainly look into that.
Oh, I'm not saying it is, I just would hate to, have the police chief, they have access to, I'm using the chief, he's sitting on the second floor, they have access, and someone looks out and sees someone walking through the second floor, potentially not where they're supposed to be. I don't want to,
Right.
I want to assume positive intent, but I want to assume somebody's wandering around where they shouldn't be. Is it,
Well, we could certainly try something with, like, we have signage, we could put up a sign that says floor closed at 4:30, right when you get off the elevator, so it hits you right in the face when you walk out. We now have cameras installed, so maybe we give Nelson access to the cameras so he can see who's coming in and out.
Right.
But there's a few options we can look at.
just food for thought?
Good. Mr. Marcy?
Mr. Town Administrator, how will we get the word out that that's something we're gonna do? We're gonna do the normal channels?
For the change in the hours? So Michelle's already put it on the website. We're gonna put it on social media. It's on the electronic signboard. There's signage on the front door right now. There's a big video monitor. We put it up on that when you walk right in the lobby, so we'll try the normal means.
Right, yeah,
begin
social
with.
media seems to get people's attention.
People who I think want to use those very specific services will tune into what the hours are.
Good, thanks.
Does Michelle, is she going to give a report on the superintendent, the highway superintendent applicant and resume program?
That's up next.
Absolutely.
That's up next on the agenda.
It is. I had it up for the first, okay.
Thank you for moving us along.
Nope.
Michelle?
Thank you.
We put in an ad for a highway superintendent position, and it's running through August 12th. We put it in the Telegram, the Webster Times, the Mass Municipal Association. It's on ZipRecruiter and Indeed. We've had 9 applicants so far.
How many?
9.
All qualified by the requirements?
Well, I'm really not sure.
Okay.
I'm not one for making that decision.
That's right. Personnel board, Mr.
They're gonna
Joseph.
vet them, right?
Anything else?
That's it.
So I was gonna ask if we could extend that deadline to see if we can get a larger pool, maybe another 2 weeks, just to kind of increase the pool. We did a pretty short turnaround time, but
You can do that by asking for unanimous consent.
I can.
Yep.
So, before we extend it, and I understand very, very preliminary, what do we think is the reason the pool is, for the want of a better term, shallow? Do we think the range doesn't fit the responsibilities? Is the responsibilities too comprehensive for people?
Good question.
And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. I just,
I
I hate this, we've done this with other positions, and we internally trying to rationalize why we didn't get as many applicants that we thought.
Well, we kind of know why, I mean, for
Right, I
that.
mean, it's different, yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm
I've
just curious if there's any kind of feeling on that.
I've looked online for similar positions in similar communities in the state, and we're in the ballpark for money. We're not out of line there. I don't know if it's the location and someone who would be qualified lives in Billerica and doesn't want to work here. It's not like a general position that a lot of people would qualify for. There's a lot of ands, ifs, or buts. I'm sure if we raised the money, I'm sure we'd get more applicants. I don't know if it's the summertime and people just aren't looking right now. I don't know if people don't want to leave. I know in my position I'm in, it's hard to find people for my team because a lot of people don't want to leave where they are now. Just a lot of uncertainty. 1 in 6 people are unemployed right now.
I just was, just food for thought. I mean, I'm certainly all for the recommendation. I don't have a problem with
So
that.
we're gonna do that, okay.
I just don't want to see us rushing at the 23rd hour too, trying to,
So,
That's
Mr.
the
Chairman,
thing,
is the
Mr.
deadline
Marcy.
currently the 12th, or do we want to extend it to the 12th?
Right, it's currently the 12th
Okay.
at 4 PM.
so you're looking for the end of the month instead, 26th?
So you want to make it the 26th? Is that what you're asking?
I'd be happy with the 26th, and there's a couple other things we could
That's
do.
2
We could
weeks.
begin, we could begin sending these resumes, we could begin sending these resumes forward to the Personnel Board to begin going through them. There's no reason why we can't start rolling interviews as they come in,
Sure.
just to get a flavor as to what the candidate pool looks like.
Mr. Chairman, can we also sometimes if you repost, they'll go to the top of the heap, and then a new batch of people might see it again?
Sure.
Do that?
And should we put some kind of contingency, not contingency, wrong word, that it's, previous applicants need not apply, selectmen have decided to extend, I don't want people that applied to think, because we have not, I think I speak for everyone, we have not begun to screen.
You can do that in the header.
We're not
No.
We're not dissatisfied with whomever may have put in.
Mhm.
We're just looking to extend the deadline to see if we can get a bigger pool. Because we have not, like, I want to make sure we say that publicly, we have not excluded anyone who's put in already.
I'm
I
not
don't want someone to think, I don't have a shot, so I'm
As
withdrawing.
long as the posting, Mr. Chairman, didn't come down, we might be all right just to,
Okay,
just to change the date and leave
Deadline,
the original posting
deadline
in place.
extended. I think if we get too wordy with it,
I just want someone that already put in for it, for example, to say, well, they must have looked at me and they don't like me, so I'm withdrawing before I even get a negative. And that person might be the one we end up wanting.
Right.
I understand.
Just,
We could do that.
I just want to
What?
make sure, be careful.
Mr. Johnson, did you have anything?
My concern would be, we know we have a deadline on the other side.
Right, 23rd hour.
Sure, yeah.
So as long as what you mentioned was, start the interviews and start that process rolling, because you don't want to run out of time.
November 10th is the deadline, so I think we're still within doable range. If we extend it to the end of August and start interviewing, we could even start interviewing, or at least send what we have to the Personnel Board now, so that it's,
Yeah,
interviews could take place over the course of a week.
The Personnel Board could at least start racking and stacking the candidates against the requirements and
Right,
understand that portion of it.
right.
'Cause that doesn't change no matter whether it's not enough candidates or too many candidates.
Right.
Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, I have, the only concern I have about the Personnel Board reviewing
You're up next.
the currently submitted applications is that if there's a gap between the two, the second group may, over the course of that time, be looked at a little bit differently. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is that there ought to be written reasons by each member of the Personnel Board why they have prioritized the people the way they have. So that when the time comes for a second batch to come in, they can place them within their own list.
Mr. Marcy?
Does anybody know when the Personnel Board meets next? They don't meet very frequently, I don't believe, so.
I believe it's next week.
Oh, okay, so they have an upcoming meeting. And what about after that? Like, if we wait 2 weeks and we get another tranche of resumes, will they schedule a meeting? I think they meet monthly.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna go with the monthly template.
Yeah, no, monthly's
We're gonna
too
go with
late at
the
that point,
keep moving
yeah.
along
Okay.
template.
As
All right.
needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. No, that's what I wanted to ask you.
Everybody all set?
You need a motion for that?
Well, if nobody objects to it, I'll put it on for another 2 weeks, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection?
Without objection? Any
I
objections?
would want to see that you ask for unanimous consent on the record in the minutes.
Well, why don't we just do a motion and just
So
do it
moved,
regularly,
Mr.
just for
Chairman.
You
consent?
know, you can if you want,
Motion
but
and
moved.
second, no discussion, all in favor?
Hey,
Aye, unanimous,
there you go,
done.
for the record.
All right, I'm taking up way too much time, the fire chief just told me. So, he didn't say it, but I can feel it, so.
Shocked.
I wasn't sure if he was awake.
So,
I like
Doesn't
this
have
mask.
to be.
my evaluation period ended June 30th. So Stage C, which is my annual review, the one that counts,
Any
is
year
in your
already?
packets. I've also attached the review process that we agreed upon when we started Stage A back in June, as well as the minutes from the meeting when it's on the back, where you assigned me my ratings for the progress stage, which was on December 9th. Yeah.
You want us to fill out,
It gives all the past ratings for Stage B, which are not on your current report. So you'll be looking to do Stage C, which is my annual review. And it would be up to the chair to kind of wrangle in how you're going to do that. I mean, it's suggested on the cover sheet that shows the proposed way we did it last time. And I think the way Mr. Sullivan did it when he was chair was that we did it publicly, he gave me my ratings, and they were all averaged out. Everyone, all the public ratings were assigned, talked about publicly, and then for each category, they were averaged out and assigned that way.
So what you're asking for us is for the next meeting to have this filled out? And we
Well,
go
here's
over
the
it
thing.
publicly?
My timing is impeccable because I'm going to be on vacation for the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So maybe we'll have to do it at the following meeting, or we can cancel the next meeting and have one after that instead, if you want me here.
Oh, I don't want to go a month without a meeting.
It wouldn't be a month.
I'm kind of leaning towards meeting weekly myself.
What?
I won't lose 4-1 anymore?
look at Sully, he's
I'll
like,
lose 3-2 now?
what now?
I'll lose 3-2 instead of 4-1?
It's
You're getting closer, right? So whatever the
I learned it by
board's
watching
pleasure is.
you. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr.
Take your first
Administrator.
defeat gracefully.
Go ahead.
So the next meeting, Michelle, is on the 17th, 18th?
Yeah, it's September, it's not
Gave
till-
it up this year.
yeah.
17th, so we could we could have it on the 21st instead if you want. Or you could
I'm
go
okay
on
with
without
that.
me.
Thoughts? Okay with the 21st?
Or you can have it and just have my evaluation at the next assigned meeting, it's up to you.
Without you here, or?
Well, no, I'll wait, just give it to me when I come to the following meeting.
Do the 24th instead of the 17th.
24th.
So do we get yourself, Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm sorry, we get your self-eval first? Or we do
We have the,
I'll present,
for this period?
for my evaluation, I'll fill it out and I'll send it out this week.
Right. And then we do ours independently and
You
then
do yours all independently and then
we
you,
collate at a meeting,
correct,
which must be done publicly.
which must be done publicly.
Right, so I'll tabulate like I did last
Yeah.
year, and then we'll, okay.
Away we go.
So these 3 pages, Mr. Town Administrator, you want us to fill out like we did last
Right.
time?
Yes,
All right.
please.
so when
take
will
that
we
home.
be conducting your review?
24th,
24th,
24th, which is what day of the week?
Monday,
a Monday.
3 weeks from today.
Oh, that's right. Jesus, that's
And the
quick.
summer's over.
Very much.
Kids are back to
That is
school.
quick.
Well, sort of.
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
So, Mr. Town Administrator, you will provide us with how you did against all your goals and provide us the information required to evaluate you against the goals.
I provide information that you request, and I provide information in terms of what my sense of accomplishing those goals have been.
Thank you.
We get that before the 24th?
You'll have it before the 24th, definitely.
Just checking. Any other questions?
We'll take that home for homework.
No?
So we're out the 17th, we're in the 24th.
And then as you're doing that, Mr. Chairman, start thinking about my goals for FY '21, because that's the next phase. We just have to agree to plan, to populate those same categories.
You know, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Joseph.
can you give us, if you had your druthers, can you give us a list of what your goals would be for the coming year?
Priorities.
I'll make it my goal if you want.
I mean, I'd love to see them. That has nothing to do with evaluating this year,
Yeah.
but I'd love to see them to ponder in case there's anything that can be branched or,
Yep.
you know, altered in some way that might be agreeable to both parties.
Right.
Mr. Johnson?
I'd argue that we would do that together, create the goals, because the way the town needs to move forward, we'll definitely not go backwards, needs to be defined, the goals broken up, you know, what are the metrics we're looking for, and then assign whether it's projects or work around those goals to get us there. And that would be all department heads, departments, all tied into one matrix of this, so that we don't, you know, it's
I need to
very
understand
siloed
that.
right now. It's very siloed right now, and I don't see often the connection until it's the budget level. So
Yeah, when I say the parties, meaning two, it would be the Board of Selectmen and the TA. In
Yeah.
terms of,
Yeah, here,
and you know the old adage, they have to be challenging but achievable.
yeah, SMART goals.
smart goals.
Yeah. All right.
That's what us kids call them.
No, but we know, like he said, the metric, here's what we want to get done, then, to your point, Mr. Joseph, then we say, okay, Jonathan, we work together to come up with these 5 things, go fill in the sub-bullets for each of those, and that becomes his,
Yeah, I don't see any problem in that happening easily. I really don't.
No.
Not with this board.
Good. We're all good with that?
Sure. It won't be
But-
good with my suggestions, but
I'm sorry?
it won't be good with my suggestions, but
oh, I can't wait. Does it involve something
Wait
down the
with
street?
bated breath. All right, next on the agenda, we have Lori Smith, Town Clerk, request to hold Fall Town Meeting on Monday, October 19th, 2020, an update on fall voting logistics and scheduling. Good evening.
Hey, Lori.
Hi, thank you for having me tonight.
Of course.
Right.
Hey, Laurie.
So as far as the Fall Town Meeting, I believe you were looking at a couple of dates, either October 26th or November 2nd. I was coming tonight to see if you would consider having the date of October 19th for the annual fall meeting. I'm going to be going through the election schedule in a little bit, but it's going to be impossible to go around the early in-person voting for the November election. But if we could get it as far away from that as possible, from my perspective, that would be extremely helpful because it's going to be so busy. So that's how I came up with the October 19th date.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Oh, one question, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, one
Laurie, it's usually towards the, it's usually later than that, though, right?
It is,
The 28th or something? Okay.
Right.
We can't.
So for everybody
The
listening.
election, it takes like a week to
Yep.
go through all the requirements that we have.
Thanks. No, I just, for everybody at home, want to
Good.
know
You're good?
which direction.
Everybody's
it went.
good?
Sure.
Was the motion for the 19th, Mr. Chairman? I
Yes.
didn't hear it. Okay.
Okay, everybody's good? Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurie.
Laurie.
Now the election you want to hear about, what's going to be going on for that. On July 6th, the governor passed legislation relative to voting options in response to COVID-19. What that came up with is 3 different options for voting. They can have vote by mail, early voting in person, and vote on election day. I'll briefly go through those. With the vote by mail, the state has mailed out postcards. I'm sure you all received them to everyone that was a registered voter as of July 1st. They received a postcard that they can send back to us to receive a ballot. There's been a little bit of confusion on that, so I just wanted to go over that briefly tonight. On the postcards that people received, it will have their name and address, and then it will state what party that they are enrolled in. So that seems the confusion is if you're an unenrolled voter. That just means, that used to be what was called the independent party, or referred to as that. That means you have your options as far as what ballot that you want to select for a primary. So on the postcards that it has at the bottom, people can check off whether they want a ballot sent to them for September, the September 1st election, which is the primary, or the November 3rd, or both. So what we're finding is people are checking off for all of them, even if they're unenrolled, and then not choosing a party. So if people have not sent their card back in and you're unenrolled, please select a party. We cannot process it without that. If you do choose a party ballot that you want sent to you, it's not going to be changing the party that you're enrolled in. It's just going to tell us what ballot to send to you. Voters also can go online onto the Dudley website, so www.dudleyma.gov. Under Town Clerk Online, they can see how they're presently registered to vote, and they can either change their party or register to vote right online, as long as they do it before the deadline of August 22nd for the September 1st ballot. And you would want to do that before applying for a ballot to be mailed to you. So, yes, John?
Good question. Laurie, I got one from the state, a card. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes, the state mailed them out to everyone that was registered to vote as of July 1st.
Okay, so it's not coming from the town? Okay.
No, that came from the state. Anyone that registered after July 1st but before the August 22nd will receive a paper application from us to do the same thing.
Okay.
And then in September, there'll be another one that will be going out for the November election.
Lloyd,
Mr. Joseph.
could you succinctly tell the people what the difference is between a mail-in ballot and an absentee ballot?
Okay, so it's pretty much the same thing. For absentee, there's certain criteria that you have to adhere to before you should be requesting it. So either you're sick, you cannot physically make it to the voting location, you're going to be away on business and won't be able to go to the polls, you're going to be out of state for any other reason. So basically, an absentee, you would need a reason to be requesting it. That's been relaxed some with COVID too, because of concern for your health and safety could be considered that too. The early voting by mail, you don't need a reason. Anyone can apply for that.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome. So, oh, sure.
Go ahead, I'll wait.
Okay, so the information that I'm going to give next is going to be available online, so if people can't keep up writing down the dates, that's fine. It's all going to be available. For the September 1st primary, it's going to be held from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Dudley Municipal Complex. You'll be able to view a sample ballot on the website and the list of all these deadlines. Hopefully we'll get that up to the website tomorrow. Again, just a reminder, for the September election, you must choose your ballot type, so whether you're doing it by the mail process or you're going to be here in voting in person early or at the election, you're going to be asked that. The deadline to register to vote is August 22nd for the September election. The deadline for vote by mail application is August 26th at 5 p.m. The deadline for absentee ballot application is August 31st at noon. These are the dates that we have for early in-person voting. We were mandated by the state to have Saturdays and Sundays, so it's going to begin on Saturday, August 22nd from 2 to 8 p.m., Sunday, August 23rd from 8 to noon, and then Monday, August 24th through Friday, August 28th. It will be, let me go back on that, Monday, August 24th through Thursday, August 27th, it's going to be 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And on Friday, August 28th, it's 9 a.m. to noon. The presidential election is November 3rd, 2020, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Dudley Municipal Complex. Deadline to register to vote is October 24th. Deadline for vote by mail application is October 28th at 5. Deadline for absentee ballot application is November 2nd at noon. The early voting for that election was greatly increased. It's going to begin on Saturday, October 17th, and it's going to go through Friday, October 30th. The dates Monday through Friday are going to be the same as they are for the September one. For Saturday, October 17th, it's going to be from 8 a.m. to noon. Sunday, October 18th, from 8 a.m. to noon. Saturday, October 24th, from 2 to 8 p.m. And Sunday, October 25th, from 8 to noon. So we've got 14 days of early voting right there. So people have the three options: the vote by mail, the early in voting in person, which they don't need to apply, they just need to come down, and the day of. Precautions that we are recommending that people follow. The message to the voters is do not go to the polls if you're sick or you are exposed to COVID-19. Wear face coverings. Don't touch your face at the polls just to take away any risk of spreading anything. Maintain social distancing, keeping 6 feet away, and keep the ballot dry and free from hand sanitizers to avoid any malfunctions when you're at the voting booth. Any questions on the dates?
Marcy.
Just dates, Laurie. I'm just curious about the, what kind of, have a lot of people been applying for the mail-in ballots?
I'd say we have about 1,000 right now, and it's only a week into it.
1,000 out of 6,000?
We have 7,000 voters,
Wow.
roughly. So the response has been really, really
Wow.
good. And I'm sure the in-person voting, we're going to get a good response on that, too.
Sure.
So hopefully on Election Day, it will cut down the foot traffic that we're going to have that one day. It looks like that's going to continue.
There's still something about going on the day, though.
Oh, I'm
for
not
me.
discouraging people. I mean, any way that they want to come vote is fine.
I know. Thank you, Laurie.
Lori, how are we gonna staff for like this 30 days of
Yeah.
voting?
That was my next.
Okay, so that, I'm gonna have to tap into my election workers, and hopefully, as far as funding, I've got to speak with John on that and see if there's any.
CARES Act cover that?
Yeah, anyway, because we're gonna need additional staff for that, because it's impossible, once you have the early voting, you're at the counter the whole time. So
Unfunded
we're gonna need at least 2 people doing that, and we still have our normal day-to-day things that we're trying to do in addition to all of this.
Wow.
But we'll make it work. We'll tap into the staff that we have available. As far as logistics, John and I were briefly talking. We really don't want the in-person voting to be at our counter up in the town hall, because all of that traffic is going to be coming through the town hall. I'm going to be meeting with John again and the Board of Health to go through. What I would like to do is have it downstairs in the lobby, especially where we have the extended hours there. I would have to hire someone to come in, like we did for the election. Someone's going to have to sanitize all of the utensils that are used, the voting booths. But ideally, what I would like to do is have the table set up with check-in right, maybe to the right of the elevator, so as soon as people are coming in. And then I've got to check and see if the police conference room is available. If it is, I would like to reserve that and have voting booths set up in there, so it's 6 feet apart, reduced like we did on the voting in June. If not, if it's not available, I can move it down to the senior center in the back and do the same thing there. So what I would have to do is hire someone to be in that room to sanitize the booths after every person goes through. Same thing with the utensils on that. I want to take this opportunity to thank John and your board for allowing the poll pads for us to purchase for this. We used it at the town election, the annual town meeting, which it didn't seem to make it go faster because we had 2 town meetings and 2 different check-ins we were doing this time, but it's going to make it a world of difference at the next one. But for this voting, this is going to make it possible for us to have it in the lobby and not have to have people come up to our counter. We can use the poll pads. It's the first time that the state is allowing them at elections. So they're going to be helping us at the elections this year as well. Let's see if there's anything I missed there.
It's easy, you just use your license to vote.
Right?
Oh,
Number 3,
Oh, here we go.
Cybersecurity, that's why is it cybersecurity on the list, Judge?
So for the election day itself, the people that come on election day to vote, the setup seemed to work really well in June as far as how we reallocated where people go in the traffic pattern. So we're going to duplicate that model again. It seemed to work really well. I don't see why it wouldn't work this time. I know we'll have more voters, a lot more voters than we did in June, but given how they're going to be spread over a larger time, I think we'll be fine.
Okay. Fingers crossed.
It'll go well. And I
Very
believe,
confident with you at the helm, Lori.
thank you. I believe you have the warrant too for the September election tonight? Is that-
Yes,
Yes, okay.
September,
September 1st. Yes, primary.
It's not on the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's on the
so the
agenda.
next,
You have
the
it.
next one? Okay.
yeah. We have time to sign it the next one, right?
Yeah, when's your next meeting? Is it the 24th?
If you vote on it, we can put it out and you can sign it at your convenience if you vote on it.
Okay, because I believe, and I don't know offhand, I believe the date we have to have it posted is the 25th
Oh,
of August.
If you vote on it now, we can come in and sign it all this week.
Vote on it.
Got it
On
handy.
the
I
agenda,
do.
though.
Oh, okay, we'll go.
Not on the agenda.
Like,
So we
another
can
quick-
vote on it the 24th and it'll be done the 25th.
You can vote on it tonight, 'cause
You could do either.
it's on the agenda, so you can, might as well just do it
It's
tonight.
not on the agenda.
She is, the town clerk is.
But
Parliamentarian?
it's a request to hold fall town meeting. It's nothing, an update on fall voting logistics and scheduling.
What's the motion that you're considering making?
None. I don't think we can do it. That's all I'm saying, none.
I'm going to lean towards,
24th.
I'm going to lean towards the 24th on the guidance of
What do you name, my friend?
See,
older members of the board.
Paul's the
It
parliamentarian.
has to be posted on the 25th?
25th, yes, I believe offhand.
Can have a quick Zoom meeting or something.
I
We can
just
have one
want
on
to
the
be,
24th, we'll be good.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
We
should
can
be
do it on the
fine.
24th and it'll be posted on the 25th and we'll
Yeah.
be good
Well, based on,
and safe.
on what we have listed for Laurie on the agenda, on this agenda,
Uh-huh.
can that motion be made based on the reason why we've got her under public business?
That's what
Or
we're
would
trying
it have to
make.
be stated at a later meeting?
I think we should err on the side of caution. Vote on the 24th, it's posted on the 25th, we're good.
Okay,
That should be fine.
Make sense?
100%.
okay,
As long as the hurricane doesn't come, we'll be fine.
yeah.
I don't like to
Although
gamble
maybe that
when
would be
I'm
a
sitting
blessing in
this chair.
disguise at this
I mean, like
point.
Mr. Massey just said too, we could still have the
week.
option of a special meeting if we had to, or we can do it as a Zoom if we
Yeah,
had
we
to.
can do a Zoom.
If it comes up, you
If it
you
If it comes
discover
out the
it,
dates,
Yeah.
if it's not the 25th, I'll check when I go back to my office, then I'll let you know, but I believe it's the
Okay.
25th of
We
August.
can
if
have
it's
a
not,
quick
we'll
meeting.
figure it out.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Make it
figure
work.
it out.
We'll make it work.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Laurie.
Any
Thanks, Lori.
questions
Anything
on
else
the
for Lori?
elections? or-
Anything else from you?
It's off topic, but could I just make one announcement for people? I'm looking at the dog licensing, and I know it's a smaller issue than the elections right now, but we have, I looked today, it was 320 dogs that are still unlicensed in town. We sent a postcard out in, I think it was May, the end of May, and after the postcards went out, we got a huge response. I just wanted to remind people, and I'll put a message out on the sign if I can through Michelle, just reminding people that if they have not done that, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be asking the animal control officer to issue the citations that she usually does. We've put it off quite a bit this year because of COVID, but these were due in January, and it's almost time to renew, and we still haven't gotten some that have done their licensing. So I just wanted to let, a gentle reminder to let people know that they still need to do that if they haven't.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you, Laura.
Nice job,
Yeah.
Laurie.
Next up, board member comments. Mr. Sullivan?
We don't have too much, Mr. Chair, just, I apologize, we usually do like a moment of silence at the beginning of the meeting for the COVID stuff, and I didn't ask for it, but I just would like, I wrote it down somewhere, the,
I apologize for forgetting,
No.
Mr. Sullivan.
no, it's my fault, I didn't bring it up. I looked up the numbers quickly before the meeting, it was something like 118 8,000 cases, does that sound right? We're over 8,000 deaths. And I didn't get the amount of people who have recovered, but we certainly feel blessed people have recovered, but we didn't want to not note the people that are still suffering. And based on the information I got from the administrator in the last couple of weeks, it appears anyway that Dudley's doing pretty good. There's graduation parties I noticed in some neighborhoods, and just hope and pray people are following the social distancing guidelines, because this is we're nowhere near the end. And Dudley's got some good numbers right now, and I'd like to just see everyone stay safe. I want to see our public safety people stay safe when they get there, and as always, check on your neighbors, check on your elderly. Make Dudley the special place that it is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Mr. Joseph?
We lost one of the agricultural, one of the members of the Agricultural Commission with the closing of the Kauai designer custom blended cheeses. They have closed, and that's unfortunate. But aside from that, and the caution that Jay always closes each meeting with, we want people just simply to be smart, be safe. If you have any question about the hand sanitizer you're using, please note that the FDA, Federal Drug Administration, on their website has a list of over 100 hand sanitizers that are dangerous and contain toxic materials. And the majority of them are made in Mexico. So if you have hand sanitizer at home and you can't find where it was manufactured, go online to the FDA website, and there you can find out if the hand sanitizer that you use is safe. Outside of that, go well and be cautious.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Mr. Johnson?
I'd just like to say that there's still a lot of people on edge, struggling, and going through tough times, both with COVID and with the ramifications of the changes that have been made in the state. So, be kind to others and help if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Marcy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready to order some dinner from my daughter and I, after actually finally got on my exercise bike for a change, and was sweaty and was ready to move on to feed her. She sat on the floor with her iPad while I finished, and then I said, looking to order some food, and she, she's nonverbal. I think a lot of people might know that. Everybody knows Jessica. She didn't answer me, like with her or any sounds like that. And I looked over, and Jessica was having what they termed a grand mal seizure, which she's never had before. And her dad sat there and didn't know what to do. And the only thing I could do was dial 911. And I am very thankful to the services that this town has that came to my house very quickly and helped me and Jessica get to the hospital. So I want to publicly thank Chief Wayner and Chief Kochanowski's teams for getting us there. And Jessica's okay. She was fine. I mean, after a while, sometimes you only get one grand mal in your life, but for a, you know, an Angelman syndrome child who hadn't had a history of that. That was very scary, and the professionalism, the knowledge, like, one of the EMTs, Eric Spall, says to me, "John, where do you want to take her?" I'm like, he goes, "Let's go to UMass." And by the time Jessica came to, why are these people staring here looking at me? And she didn't want to go. She didn't, or was just very disoriented. So they helped me get her downstairs and into the ambulance. So guys, I can't thank you enough. When someone calls, that bell is answered every time. And when it hits close, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Joseph, you guys have all been, you know, carted away by our team. You know, when it happens to remember your family, you're very thankful. So I wanted to publicly thank everybody and really be grateful of the great town we have. Thank you.
Amen.
Thank you. Glad
John,
to
I'm
hear
glad you
she
got
as
it
well.
signed.
We do have exceptional people in this town when the bell rings. I'm not gonna have anything tonight because everyone had, geez, how do I follow that anyway? Departmental communications. Chief Kochanowski. Nothing. Stan, anything? Glad she's good.
Okay, as all you know, I can do it from up here. The recycling center did not go very well from the start. I mean, we're working out all the bugs in the system. People are screaming, they want their money back. They didn't know how everything was gonna work. Well, we're trying our hardest. The system is, with our guys are getting the knowledge of how everything's going to keep the flow of traffic down and to keep them off Main Street. And we're doing the best we can with that for the staff we have. So hopefully things will get better with that and the public will understand why we have to do what we have to do. And other than that, we're doing our best to work with John to keep everything that he asked us to do around town, just keep everything going.
Thank you, Stan.
Mr. Chair, while Stan's there,
Yes.
and I don't remember, Stan, if we talked at the last meeting, but it's been a continued appreciation with the veterans. I know they reached out to Jonathan, and Jonathan reached out to your guys, and short-staffed incredibly. The next day, the Veterans Court was cleaned up, and people are still noticing it and still commenting on how good it looks. So, as a board, I want to thank you and your men for quick response, and it's an important piece of the town hall, and thank you.
Yeah, we removed all the flags this past week also, with the
It looks good.
assistance of the police department.
Looks good.
It does. Anyone else? Anything? No? Thank you. Hopefully we can do something about the transfer station and the quality of life section there
Yeah.
at the library.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't think we're done talking about that yet, Stan, but I think for now, thank you for, you're doing the best you can.
That's all we can do.
Education is key, not just for the residents, but for us too, you know, and understanding what people go through when they go there, so, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Police chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick things. First of all, glad, Mr. Marcy, that your daughter's doing well, and thank you very much for the kind words. As you know, things, especially for police work, is not always the greatest right now, but we really feel blessed that we're in a great community. Appreciate the support of the board and the administrator and everybody here, and certainly the citizens in the town. They've really been very, very positive to us, and we greatly appreciate all that. Along those lines, just to update you, Louis Pacheco officially graduated Friday. So he is starting patrol actually this evening, I believe, is his first shift. I said, enjoy yourself because your days with weekends off are going to be done for several years. I think he's starting on midnights and he'll be working his way up from there. Also going to have, as part of that, Jim Anise is going to be serving as our detective as this goes forward. So we're glad to get that position rolled out and get that moving along. So just a few changes with everything there. So, but thank you again. If any questions or anything, I'll be glad to cover them. But otherwise, appreciate it.
Anybody have anything?
Appreciate you, Stephen, and your
Thank you.
team.
Thank you.
You have my full support.
No, like I said, it is one of those things that As you know, I've been working a lot close with the legislative team for the Mass Chiefs, and we've been dealing with a lot of the reform discussions that have been going on, and there's certainly a lot of frustration, and I see how some communities and some departments are treated, and I'm fortunate, and I know our folks are fortunate to have the support that we have here in this town, and so I wish every place was the same as this, but unfortunately it's not, but we just appreciate what we have too. Thank you very much.
I think Dudley's a special place, and the people who are here recognize that.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
George, what do you have? You're all good for now.
Yeah, he's gonna keep us here till 11 o'clock.
Anybody else? No? That's it?
He's got executive with us.
Okay, the chair will take a motion to move into executive
Usually Paul reads that.
session and not reconvene. Mr. Joseph, you care to read?
Mr. Chairman, we always need to refer to Mass General Law. So my motion is that we move into executive session, not to reconvene in open session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, specifically to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiations with non-union staff and to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. Period.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do we need a
Can we
roll
just
call
add
vote?
one thing to it? This is something that was mentioned by council. As an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining as declared by the chair. So, Mr. Chairman, as long as you agree with that.
Yeah, that, I would add that to my motion.
Good with me. Second.
Roll call vote.
Stephen Sullivan, aye.
I'm RCI.
Paul Joseph, aye.
Carrie Siganovich, aye, unanimous.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
See
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Thanks,
Night.
Nick.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So we can